So tomorrow's gonna be
umbrellas,
fine.
but I'm gonna get out of the.
I'll be there. I'll have an umbrella.
We all are hoping that it's fake and it'll be
Yeah.
sunny.
Sure.
Nobody's gonna show up,
Oh.
except people who have to be,
Oh, it does? Stand? Oh, it's just.
which is all of our vendors, right? Have to be there.
And our workers, is it Ocean City?
No, it's right.
Is she on the phone? Oh, okay. So who's on the phone? Jerry?
No. Ron, you, John Brown, Tom, and Will.
John's here? Oh, okay. All right, well,
John Brown.
yeah,
He's here, he just came in.
Oh, yeah.
John Brown's, but I don't want to sing that. Anyway, Human Service meeting's been being called to order. First, we have courtesy of the floor. Does anyone want to address council under courtesy of the floor? Seeing no one, we want to do an update on mental health services, because as you know, we've been going down the line on the different divisions. And now, mental health. It's their turn. So if you want to come up and just give us an update on where you're at and what's going on, how things are, and then maybe there'll be a few questions.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Tiffany Crush, for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm the administrator for mental health, early intervention, and developmental programs. Today, I came just to kind of give you an update on our forensic programs and some trainings that we're doing out in the community. As everybody here is probably aware, the biggest problem that we're facing is staff shortages. Providers just don't have enough staff to run programs, to take new referrals. So we're working on trainings that will bring more people into the working world for our population. So we just ran a certified peer specialist training. For anybody who doesn't know that, a certified peer specialist is a person with lived experience that receives this certification. It's a 2-year certification through the state. They go through a 2-week training, and then they can work with our consumers. They're taught about mental illness. They're taught about how to interact, share their own stories, signs to look for, and things like that. We just finished the course last week and certified 20 new certified peer specialists. So that's great for us because there is a need. We rely on our peers for a lot of different things. We'll also be running certified peer supervisor trainings so that our current supervisors and even peers can get tools, get the foundations they need so that they can promote up into these different positions. So that is scheduled, and we're looking to train about 25 supervisors. The other training we have coming up is just a wellness recovery action plan. We call it WRAP. And it's training up to 60 people who work in the field on how to write wellness recovery plans. So what we want to do is when someone is well, you want to write this plan with them. They talk about signs of when they're well and signs to look for when they're not doing so well. They identify their support systems, kind of write out almost like an advanced directive, depending on what their needs are. And it's a plan that they can give to their therapist, they can give it to their support system. Even if crisis intervention had to show up, they can hand this over so we know who to call, emergency management, who they can contact. So we really want to give tools out to the providers that we're working with. So we're hoping, we have capacity to train 60, so we're hoping that they'll take advantage of that. An update on our mental health aging program. For those of you who have been here, it is a team program that was started in 2018. It was the brainchild of my deputy, Kathy Cromer. And it's a team approach to providing mental health supports in Graysdale to support the staff, work with the residents. The ultimate goal of it is to be able to maintain people at Graysdale and decrease the number of hospitalizations and emergency calls. Our team has a behavior specialist, they have counselors, they have certified older adult peer specialists. So these are peer specialists who are trained and of the age to deal with older adults. And we even have a bilingual COPES, that's the nickname for it, on staff. So Kathy let me know that currently we are working with 210 individuals. And to date, since the program started, we served 416 individuals at Graysdale. So it's been an amazing program. Haven House is the provider. They are actually working with Magellan to make it a Magellan-funded service, which will take away some of the funding that we have to put towards it, and also allow us to expand out to other skilled nursing facilities and personal care boarding homes that we have in the county. So we're really excited for how it's been going. And we just want to continue expanding. And the biggest one is our forensic programs. So I just want to say thank you to our administration, to County Council, for approving our newest position, which is a forensic program specialist. Our forensic programs have expanded greatly since we received grant funding in 2018, and we identified the need to have someone that's specifically going to oversee these programs, work with providers, make sure things are operating as they should, and then also seek out other opportunities, grants that are out there, keep watching the need, and then expanding the programs that we have. So some of the programs we have, I'll just quickly talk about. Thrive is our forensic case management program. This is a program that's referred, we get most of our referrals from the county jail, state parole. They're referred to the Thrive program. Thrive identifies a case manager that links to that individual. They'll start working with them while they're in the jail. What our goal is to have them successfully re-enter back into the community. So some of the things we help them with is identifying outpatient services. Some people need help getting medical assistance, Social Security. We work on that. The biggest need is always housing. So our case managers, there are 5 of them. They're really skilled at finding placements and also finding employment, because they have to be able to afford the housing that we do find for them. So we currently have 96 individuals in the Thrive program. And to date, since it started, we have served 325. So it's a program that keeps growing, keeps expanding, but it's, I think, really providing a great service to the jail and the community. The next program that kind of ties with it, although it's smaller, it's not for everybody, we call it STARTS. It's a reentry housing program. It is also run by Haven House. And what STARTS is, we have 3 homes that are 3-person homes, 2 male homes and 1 female. And it's a master leasing, so Haven House holds the lease, and then they kind of sublet to these individuals that are approved for the program. And when you're approved for the program, a lot of times they come out of the jail, they go to the house, and then they're heavily case managed by the STARTS team and also the Thrive program. And while they're there, goals are similar to Thrive, but they have house rules to follow. They're learning daily living skills, they're learning budgeting, we're looking for employment, all of those things. It's a 6-month program. Some leave sooner if they find housing. Some leave if they don't follow the rules. But it's been really successful. We currently have 8 individuals in the houses. There's always potential, the way the funding is available, that we could do a 4th house if the need ever came up, to take 3 more. And to date, we've served 19 individuals. So it's a neat program, and Haven House has really created a great curriculum to keep everybody in check and doing what they have to do. The biggest one, and I know, Mr. Myers, you have asked about it at several meetings, is called the ORLTSR, which, more letter soup, it is the Outpatient Restoration Long-Term Structured Residence. ORLTSR is much easier. This, again, Kathy Cromer's brainchild, was developed in 2018 when we were told about this forensic money that was available from the state. And the goal of the program, when it opens, and I'll get to that, is to take individuals who are sitting in our jail, who are awaiting, that they've been determined that they are not competent to stand trial. Typically, they would go to Norristown for restoration of competency. There's backlogs. We've had people. So rather than have anybody languish in the jail, this is an 8-bed facility that can do competency restoration. It's going to also be available, depending on numbers, obviously, if we have openings. It can be a place for conditional release. We would rather have people in program, in treatment, rather than sitting in the jail and not getting fully the services, especially those who have serious mental illness. So it's an 8-bed facility. It is located on Canal Street in Easton. It has been under development for 2 years now. It was going well, and COVID hit and delayed us, and then we got back on track. We were scheduled for April. However, now we're hitting supply chain issues. We do not have windows and doors. So without those, we clearly can't open, but while we are waiting, and the goal is now June 1st to say construction is done and we can get the certificate of occupancy and the license. The provider who has been selected is Comar. They already are one of our residential providers. They bid on the RFP. And Comar has been working on programming. So we have worked with the courts, we have worked with probation and pretrial, we've created the process, we've come up with the programming. So we are confident we'll have everything ready. There is still one key point, and that will be staffing. Comar has taken this very seriously. They have been working on staffing and hiring for months now. They even hired a dedicated HR person for Northampton County programs to try to work on recruitment and retention here. So once this opens, obviously there's some, there's certain types of offenders that we will not take, but our goal is to bring them in, treat them, and with the hope of restoring competency, and then they can come back and face their charges, and however they are just, whether they have to serve time served, or they're disposed of. But treatment is the ultimate, the goal. It is a 24-hour supervised facility. They have worked very hard on security. We have cameras, gates, door locks. All fixtures are anti-ligature. A lot of time, effort, and thought went into it from providers. So we are excited to see it finally open. It's been long, but our partners have been great in the whole thing.
Oh, are you finished?
That's what I have on forensic programs. I can give you an update if you want to hear about CIT. I did get a little update.
You should tell them what it is and update them.
Okay.
Do you want to take questions as you're going, or
That's
wait?
fine.
Go ahead, Ms. Zirinsky.
Structured residence. So we have one in Walnutport already. And then this is an OR LTSR, which is an outpatient restoration, long-term structured residence. So the one in Walnutport is actually, it's an old, it looks like a bi-level ranch home that's been converted, has multiple bedrooms and all that. This facility is, they've used it for many purposes, but it was an old almost warehouse building that we have reconfigured to make it very home, like we've changed the outside landscape, the inside, there'll be individual bedrooms and things like that. So this one doesn't have the exact homely feel like some of our other programs, but it is designed to have that more family-like atmosphere.
Did you say how many people were in this program?
The ORLTSR can have up to 8.
Up to 8. And so so I guess what I'm asking is there a wait period, like a wait list of people who would need to get on this? Because it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of beds or, a lot of space for people who might have to go through with this competency restoration.
Correct. So Norristown is still an option too. So it's, Norristown is there also. When we started this, there was probably talking with the jail, maybe 4 or 5 identified people. And then as things have changed and shifted and people are getting into Norristown faster, it's going to vary. There wasn't as many. So that's when we also added, we don't want it to sit vacant, so we added the conditional release part to it and talked with the state. As of right now, there is no waiting list that I'm aware of, but we are keeping an eye out. We're already working with the jail, identifying people, because there are other options, obviously, but we want to use closer to home if we can.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. You mentioned the staffing issues. Is that more of a provider issue, or is that a county issue, or both?
It is a provider issue. Do I have vacancies right now? Yes, but only because people are promoting internally. So congratulations to them. But we're actually almost back to being full again. But our providers are the ones that are struggling. I just heard today that one provider only has 2 staff to cover a house with 11 people. And what they're telling us is they can't pay the rates that are comparable. They don't have the sign-on bonus money available. Especially nurses is another challenge that they're facing. So, this is just my little plug. If Lori were here, my wish list would be more funding from the state. We haven't had additional funds since 2012, and we are doing more with what we've had. And so, my hope is that funding is coming, and sustainable funding, not one-time funding. I appreciate it, but I can't sustain programs on one-time funding. I need ongoing allocation.
I hear you.
There you go, Lori.
And I'll just add then
In the cloud.
that is one of CCAP's top priorities. I think it is the number one priority is to increase mental health funding, because it's been flat for the last several years. The other question I had is, you've referenced Norristown on several occasions here. Would those cases typically have gone to the Allentown State Hospital, say, years ago?
I can't answer that only because that's before my time over here, so I feel
Looking at me.
Mr. Heckman might know better, but that was.
What was it like?
I think one of the questions that we had I was here when that facility closed, and one of the questions we had was, those folks weren't just going to disappear. So I guess the question is where has it manifested itself? Some of it is wind up in your program, some of it is in the nursing home, some of it is in the jail. So I guess, my question really is, what can we do given that set of circumstances? And if Norristown is an option, should we be pushing more people down there? I don't know.
I'm never going to say push people into a state facility. I mean, there's clearly a need for it when there is a need. I think that the bigger thing we can do is push the state to give us more funding so that we can open more programs like our LTSR in Walnutport, which is almost like a step down. Open more community programs that we can support people in. I don't always agree that the state facilities are the best option. They're there for a purpose, but I would always push for more funding from the state.
So would I. Thank you.
Would you just, Comar, would you spell the name of that?
Sure, it's
vendor?
COMHAR. They're out of, their main office is down in the Philadelphia area.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, so the Walnut Port is for, it's not necessarily associated with prisoners. It's
Correct.
a straight LSTR.
Yeah, LTSR, yep.
Okay, and that's 8 beds in that as well as the 8?
I want to say it has 10, maybe,
All right.
but
All right, so it's in that.
I don't want
it's
to
in
be
that
quoted
ballpark.
on that, yeah.
There's nobody's taking an oath here, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and as to Mr. Kusik's reference, the vendors, one of the problems, and that's not a new problem, which precedes you by many years, they've never paid. One of the problems we have when we use some of these facilities, especially the 24/7s or the piers, is they're notorious for not having paid people. I mean, we would turn down vouchers for in-home services at one time because there was no point in taking it. There was no one out there to provide the service that the voucher would provide. And that was hard for some folks to understand, but as you mentioned, like you use a grant, and if you use it for ongoing things and the grant dries up, you could have a problem. So that was the concern there. And as far as the LTSRs, I think that's an issue that certainly was brought up at the time. As Mr. Kusik says, I was around when the state hospital was being closed, and that was the time when the state put that CHIP program into effect. And everybody was going to be privatized. And we didn't need and the roots of it, we didn't need a 5,000-bed state hospital in Allentown, which was hard to argue with the onset of the new medications. Not everybody in there needed to be in a 24/7 lockdown facility. Having said that, as the rounds of CHIP went on and people were deinstitutionalized, you can always draw a direct line from one problem sometimes to another. These folks, we got to a point where there were folks that really needed to be in a structured facility. I mean, we have a tough time in our society looking at something and saying, oh my God, people shouldn't be in a structured facility who can make it on their own. We should get people out 24. But there are folks, for whatever reason, a lot of serious mental health issues, as you know, who just can't function in an open society. They're not bad people, they're not doing evil things, but they just have issues. Just like you're not going to have somebody who has extreme heart issues running a relay race. Some people just can't manage it. So by the time we got to 3 or 4, CHIP 3, CHIP 4, the people coming out probably needed a place to stay. But the state, it was an economic decision. The state wanted to, I don't know how many hospitals they closed at that period of time, but they wanted to close Norristown. There was a bit of a move, but finally some saner heads in Harrisburg prevailed and said, geez, you need a hospital at the eastern end of the state. I mean, so it is difficult, and that's why I'm a big supporter of the LTSRs, you know, when we can structure them, because part of what you see with homelessness, part of what you see in the prison, and Graysdale certainly, there are situations now where society has absorbed these issues where it should have been absorbed by a more of a psychiatric setting. And as I said, I saw it in the 80s, I saw it in the late 70s, 80s. I saw it when the state hospital closed. All of a sudden, you'd see people on the street more and more. And I had one person who worked in a community setting, and the problem he was concerned was they bring people in and get them a place to live, and then they disappear because they wanted to be back. They need the structure. And you can do that to some people, but then at the end of the day, some folks, they get lost then in the system. The private comes in, they give them medication, they're supposed to show up once a week, and then they don't show up. And I know you get reports, but then if the person's lost, the person's lost. You know, it's like they don't show up for their meds. That was part of the problem to begin with. So I don't go on with that, but so are there any plans though in line with that we could we, I know we can always use more, so I don't want to ambiguous thing. Is there a need right now for a few more beds for LTSR? Aren't you seeing that drive for them right now?
I would say our housing programs, and that can, you know, EAC, which is extended acute care, our LTSR they're always full.
Yeah.
And the intakes keep coming, and the demand is there. You know, we're not like a rehab where you come 30 days and you move on. Some folks have been with us for longer periods of time, so it's not easy to always plan, like, we know he's discharged, like,
Sure.
so, you know, we can always use more.
I understand. Sure. I guess the question is waiting list. Do you have, if your beds are full and you get a referral from wherever, you mentioned Norristown, but other than Norristown, does Lehigh County, I mean, do you work with Lehigh County I think they have their own, don't they?
They have their own programs.
If you had needed a bed, would they let you use a bed and then vice versa, or has that never happened?
That has not happened in my 4 years.
Okay.
We've just been able to make plans for our consumers and find them placements as fast as we can. But I have a really good housing team, and it's a map, and they're constantly seeing where people can move and shift, and keeping in mind that these are their homes. These are what people consider their home.
Right.
So we really want to keep the consumer in mind before we make those decisions.
Well, I wish you luck in that area, because I know that's a very, very difficult area. It's one that the state doesn't like to discuss too much because that's where I think they dropped the ball big time. I mean, out of sight, out of mind kind of situation. But anyway, are there any other questions up to now? Lori, do you have a question?
John.
Oh, I'm sorry, John, I didn't see. Lori, do you have a question?
I did, but I just wondered, when she does have that backfill, like she has people that are waiting to move up into that level, what do they do as an alternative if the placements are filled that she was referring to?
You know, it depends on the individual. Sometimes there is nowhere that would be suitable to move someone, so they stay currently where they are. You know, if they are, you know, it's a team effort, not just county team, but their doctors and things like that. If they're approved for a lower level of care with maybe some additional supports in from the community, we would make referrals to that, because we do have a variety of community services that we can also incorporate. But our housing team's busy, and they work hard to move people as fast as they can to the right level of care. We don't just want to put someone somewhere just to fill a bed, so.
Okay.
No, and if you want bed and can't get it, then what do you do with them in the lag time? Because obviously they need to go there.
Typically, they're already somewhere if they're being referred to our housing program, so we work with wherever they're at. You know, if it's a hospital or one of our higher level cares that they need to step down into, we just keep close contact. We work with them, try to problem solve, and then watch as we go and see where we can move people. And we work with Magellan, which is our managed care provider, also, especially for bed searches, things like that. We kind of rally the team and try to figure it out.
Do we ever cross county lines as support?
Yeah,
She answered.
she answered that.
Are you talking about using like a Lehigh County bed? I can guarantee you Lehigh County's beds are full, as are Carbon Monroe Pikes. They're even seeing if we have beds that we would want. You know, everybody's short beds. State hospital beds are short because as CHIP dollars were accepted, we gave up beds. So everybody's in the same boat as us. So I don't think anybody out there actually has a bed that they're willing to share or available to share. And that's not just because of county line. It's just, unfortunately, the nature of what we deal with.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to get to John. The other issue, I don't know if you see it, because I'd say, yeah, we could use more beds, we could maybe get more houses, is I'm glad that the society seems to be more open about mental health. I've seen this now in my lifetime. Fortunately, it's destigmatized to a point. Well, we still have a ways to go. But one of the problems we often faced was when you wanted to get one of these houses and people found out what was going to be done with the home, it was a very difficult situation. Now, the law is on your side, but as I remember saying to a division head now and then, the law is on your side, but obviously the neighbors aren't. So we do have to be, I mean, we had people with binoculars, like peering, and it could be a mad scene. I'm just wondering, you said you haven't opened, is that getting a bit better? I mean, it could be really rough at times.
It depends on the location. I know I was told for the Walnutport LTSR, there was some concern and pushback, but I think Comar has shown that they're a good neighbor and a good provider. And the important thing is we work on building community relation. As far as the ORL TSR, we did go through zoning, and there was one individual, but I think that the partnerships we have, zoning was impressed by Comar's record, and also the landlord obviously is well-known for being a good community partner. So I think that helped to kind of
Good.
smooth the edges, but it still happens.
I know, people are people. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. I wanted to just understand the Thrive program a little bit more.
Sure.
Is that limited just to inmates that are identified with mental health issues, or all inmates that go through the prison system?
It is only for individuals with mental illness. Many times they have co-occurring. So I've been reading a lot of Thrive records lately, and we have a lot that are co-occurring with substance use. So our Thrive case managers will help make sure they're on that path, getting that treatment as well as their mental health treatment. But they do need to have a mental health diagnosis.
Now, you said it was, the program is very successful. How do you measure success on that kind of a program? Is it simply that they go through the program and don't return to the prison or end up in another facility somewhere else as a result? What's your measure of success, I guess, would be?
So I think those are two of the great ones. Obviously, we're looking to decrease recidivism. I think hearing the follow-up stories, seeing the ones that are successfully discharging because they found housing, they found employment, and also the fact that, if a program's not working, people aren't going to refer to it. So the fact that the jail and state parole, to name two, have seen it as a benefit, I think is a testament to how well it's going, and that's thanks to the good provider. And we're also keep expanding because the numbers are growing. So as we have our new program specialist in her role, she's going to work a lot on doing outcomes and gathering more data and things like that's going to be a main priority in her job, so that we have more tangible to build on, and also to seek out other funding if needed.
And how long would you follow a person that goes through the program? So once they're successful going through the program, they have housing, maybe a job, do they fall off the radar? Or do we continue to follow for a little more extended window of time as a support structure, even if it's at an arm's length?
Absolutely. So they stick with them, like they may find them a job and they may find them housing, and they'll still be open for a bit, but their main role was to help them locate the service and then refer them on. So like today we had a discharge that I saw a person has housing, they have employment, and the Thrive worker helped them get intensive case management with another provider in the community. So now Thrive has done their job, they'll discharge, and we have ICM working with them. And then they'll take another person. So we don't just kind of like, you're done. We kind of we want to make sure they have all the supports they need. So it's all there. And then they always know that they have the county. We have a specific forensic case manager that's available to support also, in addition to Thrive.
And for the 300, I think you mentioned 396 individuals have gone through the program.
325, but we have 96 currently open.
In it. And of the 325, what is the recidivism rate for that block of individuals?
That I will have to get you from the actual provider. I don't have that number right now, but I can get that for you.
Ms. Zirinsky?
So you had said that there was, I think you said the LTSR program had not been properly funded since 2012? Is that what you?
I was saying our county allocation has not grown since
The
2012.
county allocation?
Correct.
And is that funded by any programs at the state level that we would get money for that allocation?
So we get our funding through it's OMSAS, the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. And then they obviously get their funding through the state budget.
Right.
So there is, I believe, a funding increase in the budget right now. If it would pass, that would be wonderful for us. I'm not sure how much would come to us, but that's where we need the money to trickle down from.
Right. And what's the deficit that you're at now? What's the gap that needs to be filled in the funding?
We have been very good, thanks to the block grant, we're able to fund the services we have. What we're not able to do is expand. We can expand small programs, and if grants come along, expand. But the complex needs that are growing in the clients we are serving, we need more. And, as Ms. Vargo Hefner said, like facilities and placements, and we can't do that we have enough to cover what we have, but we want to be able to keep going, to meet the ever-changing needs, to come up with the new innovative ideas. So,
Well, you mentioned you need sustainable funds, not funds that are sporadic.
Correct.
Or you're piecemealing together.
correct. So like our forensic grant money, that comes annually. So that is, but, during COVID, we did receive some funding, which is great, but it was for specific things, and it was used by the state. But we want to be able to start programs and keep them going, so.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing else, would you like to continue?
I'll just give one quick, Mr. McClure had mentioned, I had talked about crisis intervention training. That is, we have a training tomorrow. For anybody that doesn't know, it's a program that's an evidence-based that we train police officers. We've trained the corrections officers in the jail, the sheriff's department, state police, even campus security. And there is a 6-hour training, and some officers choose to continue on, take the 40-hour training. If you finish the 40-hour training, you are a CAT officer. We teach de-escalation, talk signs and symptoms of mental illness. We talk about trauma. We talk about self-care for the officers. They do role plays. They hear about crisis intervention. And then at the end, they graduate, and the ultimate goal, obviously, is to keep our consumers safe, as well as the officers that are out there encountering them. And the number we're up to almost 600 officers have been trained since 2013. So it's a wonderful program. And that's all I have, unless you have other questions.
Are there any questions for Tiffany? I thank you. It was very thorough. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can get you some more funds from the state.
I would appreciate it.
We'll see. I understand Ms. Vargo Hefner is farming deep connections through CCAP, and we all know Mr. Cusick is a CCAP veteran. So maybe he can use his deep influence and work some miracles in Harrisburg. We'll see what happens. But anyway, no, it's serious, and I agree. I mean, I think it's a perfect thing for grants. I'm somewhat surprised that there hasn't been more of a push at the state level, because we're not the only community that's suffering with this. I'm sure your counterparts in Montgomery, Bucks, especially the more populous counties. I mean, this has to be a major problem. I mean, a major problem. And I'm surprised that it's gone on this long with the lack of these beds. Because we knew right away when we started, we were all called in for a discussion on the state hospital. It only took one meeting to know the state was closing it. There was no discussion. So there's we'll discuss this and come up with a solution. By the way, we don't care what you say or do, but this is going to be closed by such and such a date. So, I mean, there was a push to try and use some of the land for LTSRs, and even the late Mr. Stofa, mentioning him, was in favor of that, and most of us in the field were in favor of it. But the state opened the land up at that time to vendors, and nobody was going to come in and do that. We were hoping they'd give it to the counties and we could set some stuff up, but anyway, I don't want to hold you up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very informative. Next, we have an update from Graysdale. And what I wanted to say before we go into it, and I know we have the grant that was talked about, and I'm looking at the time. As far as the update from Graysdale, if there's anything specific, I mean, the dashboard, for my sake, is fine. If you want to say something, just, I don't see the purpose of us dwelling on the fact that we know some of the problems, that there's staffing, that's what we're trying to fix, and there's things like that. So without rehashing things we already know, I would say if you want to take a few minutes to give an update, I'd rather we dive into the plan that the executive talked about to remediate some of these. But do you have dashboards to give us tonight?
I do, but I would prefer us talk about that, and then I can just introduce in the new ADON.
I have no, okay, I have no problem with that. Why don't we go into that, because it's all Graysdale related. So discussion of the American Rescue Plan grants for Graysdale / Graysdale itself. How do we'll do it that way?
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman? We have a plan of action, not to save Graysdale, but to rebuild Graysdale. And that's why we are putting in over $15 million to recognize and realize a rebirth at Graysdale. This isn't about saving Graysdale. This is about appreciating that the pandemic, that COVID-19 itself, has reshaped long-term care facilities all across the country and across the world, for that matter. So this isn't about saving Graysdale. This is about rebuilding Graysdale. This is about a rebirth. And I would say that we must appreciate some of the things we're going to do here. We are told, we read all the time, that childcare is one of the primary reasons that so many of our workers are not going back to work in this state, in this country, and in our county. We're going to invest. You're going to hear from the team our action plan to develop a daycare at Graysdale, which will be free to Graysdale employees. This is a benefit that I haven't heard anybody else talking about. We are going to have, and you're going to hear about them, significant sign-on bonuses, significant retention bonuses, significant investment in agency, and significant investment in our physical plant at Graysdale to make the place a better place to live and work. This is part of the action plan that the team is going to talk to you about tonight. But I think we have to be clear and honest with everyone who is affected by the decisions we now make about Graysdale and its rebirth. This isn't all under our control. If we cannot slow the move to the 4.1 PPD, we will be existentially threatened. If we cannot get grandfathered with respect to the 2 persons per room, we will be existentially threatened at Graysdale. Everybody needs to know there are threats that are beyond our control that we cannot concern ourselves with at this time. What we must do is invest this $15.5 million, understanding that we will eventually be able to make the 4.1 and that we will be able to adapt to any room use sizes that we confront in the future. And finally, people are about to get paid at Graysdale. If you work in the long-term care facility anywhere within the sound of my voice, you got to come to work at Graysdale. You know, we have a very, very historic contract offer pending with our ASME folks, and all they have to do is say yes to it. But if you're out there, eventually we're going to get that contract done. And if you're out there and you're hearing about it, you're about to get paid. You should come to Graysdale. And without further ado, I'm going to let the action team tell you about the actions we're taking for the revitalization of Graysdale.
Good evening. So Sue and I are going to tag team this part. It's reviewing the retention bonus. So a few years ago, when I came into my position, we started a retention committee. We would meet as a group. We had nurses, we had career service staff on it, we had all kinds of people on it to figure out ways that we could show our appreciation for the current staff at Graysdale. We did, we bagged popcorn, we did candy, backpacks, lunch boxes, shirts. We did pizza to the floors, and it was to all areas of Graysdale. It wasn't just to nursing, it was everyone, because we are a team. So we did keychains, cups, anything you can think of that would kind of bring some little bit of joy to their jobs or make it a little easier or show the teamwork or camaraderie is what we did. But since we had this $15.5 million came up, we were looking at different ways how we could give back to the staff members at Graysdale. So we're looking at giving them bonuses, and you have more information on that.
Thank you, Jen. It's about a foot difference here. So after a lot of healthy discussion, our proposition is to allocate $2.5 million to retention bonuses. The tentative plan is to allocate $2,500 to each Graysdale employee after 12 months of service, and another $2,500 after 24 months. So that would be a grand total of $5,000 over the next 2 years of working at Graysdale, which is why now is the time to come to work at Graysdale. And essentially, did you have anything else to say on that? Mm-hmm. So essentially, the same plan exists for recruitment bonuses, same dollar amount, same time frame. Few particulars to be ironed out yet, but also $2.5 million over 2 years, same structure, $2,500 after the first 12 months, $2,500 after 24 months.
I don't want to,
That's okay.
why don't you go ahead?
Sure, we'll keep going. So the
mean,
next
no.
piece is the daycare.
I'll let you know if somebody's
Sure.
itching to say something.
Sure.
They'll get my attention.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the daycare at Graysdale, which we've talked about, I will tell you, we are making progress. We have an architect. Mike and Mealy got some fantastic news last week from the structural engineer. One of the things we have to do that is just important as a physically understand what we're talking about. On the unit we're looking at, we're basically talking about taking 10 rooms, putting a hole between 2 of them to make 5 larger classrooms. And those, the holes in the wall, if you will, I'm not speaking proper building terms, have to be significantly wide. I think about 14 feet or wider. And there was concern that we'd have to put in some sort of, specialized structural beams. But it turns out they are not load-bearing walls. So that cost will be significantly less, which is really exciting. But the total amount that we will allocate to the daycare is $2 million. And tentatively, that was thought to last 2 years. It should certainly last us longer than that, given some of the structural engineer pieces. But it will afford us the ability to pay for the daycare, for the building expenses, the salary costs of the employees, and then, of course, to be able to provide it at no cost to our current Graysdale employees.
What section of Graysdale? Are you talking about the old?
The old rehab unit,
Okay.
so, which, is it south?
Southeast one.
Southeast one. So,
Curious.
yeah, so we're not even going to need to use all of the rooms at this point, but it also gives us then the ability to expand in the future if it's as successful as we believe it will be.
As far as ongoing costs, and I think I know the answer, but I want to ask you guys because you're pros. this isn't something that the state would reimburse salaries for, a daycare type thing?
No.
All right, I didn't think so, but I thought.
But one of the
Take a chance.
goals in partnering with the daycare provider, we don't have it signed on the dotted line, so I don't want to announce that, but is that the current daycares they have that are open are all, I believe they're 4 stars. And so there's a whole star system which is not relevant for tonight's discussion, except to say, if you are in that system, you are eligible for subsidized childcare. So if you were an employee at Graysdale and your income fell below, I don't know what the threshold is, but if it fell below that, you would be eligible for subsidized daycare. So the daycare would be able to receive some of the funding that way from the state, and it would offset some of the costs for Graysdale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. John?
How many kids are you anticipating on being able to care for in the course of a day?
So the start is somewhere between 30 and 50. Closer to 30, we will have classrooms for each age group. So there'll be, I'm going to get this wrong, but infant, preschool, pre-K, there's something else in between, toddler somewhere maybe, and school-aged. School-aged being 6 and up, so that's primarily after school and summers. Maybe school holidays, snow days, things like that. And then as we, if we have a greater demand and there is funding available, we certainly have the room to expand if we need to.
And are you anticipating those 30 to 50 kids or whatever the limit is? Are you anticipating there'd be children only from Graysdale employees, or are you taking an outside?
Just Graysdale employees at this time. We think there certainly are current employees who will utilize the daycare, and maybe even more significantly, it remains to be seen, but we think it will be an excellent recruitment tool. Obviously, finding high-quality childcare is exceptionally challenging today, and to be able to find it for free it doesn't exist. So we do think that certainly within a year that will be full.
Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, do you have a question, Mr. Brown?
Currently, across the board at Graysdale, how many open positions do you have in the facility?
Maybe Jen can get that to you when she gets into the report piece of it.
Just ballpark,
Well, you want to give the plan? We'll
Yeah.
have her to do the dashboard, John, and then give you this precise number. I think she probably has that. So why don't we just go through the action plan, and then when we can back into
Yep.
functioning as of now, if that's acceptable to you, John.
So I'm going to go over the capital projects that would be covered with 1.5 million. So we have been talking about it even before I was in any kind of administrative position, that the electric at Graysdale needs to be updated. This is a $500,000 ballpark figure. We also need new nurses stations. Most are original to the buildings. We did a couple of years ago, the main building, we updated them just a little bit. They are not resident friendly in the main building. But the nurses stations in the towers, there are times when they are falling apart and you will see the wires come out, which residents could grab, so we fix that. But they need to be replaced. The loading dock, the nurses stations would be about 500,000. The loading dock that is in the main building, it is offset by a substantial amount. So when trucks back up, there is a gap between. We've talked about that for years to get fixed. And the smoke detectors, we've been updating smoke detectors as they come due, but that is something that we would like to just completely redo our smoke detectors, and that is they both are $250,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Smoke detectors, 250,000. We're hot wiring or replacing them with updated ones? What are we doing with that?
Yes, we're replacing them with updated ones.
So are these ones going to have lights on it to
Yes.
flash?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be able to tell those that they're with hearing problems. Okay.
Anything else? If
No.
not,
Thank you.
go ahead.
The next thing is for staffing agencies. We allocated $2 million for that.
So right now, like the rest of the healthcare, we need to offset our current employees with that of agencies. We still recruit and we market to have our own staff come in. And actually, it is a jumping board for a lot of the agencies to come in, and they go around to different facilities and see which one they really like, and then they come and find a home. We are hoping Greystale will be their home. So the benefit is that we have staff in there. The agencies can give our staff off, as well as, meet our residents, take care of our residents, and just become part of the Greystale family. So that's $2 million. So right now, we have onboarded 2 new agencies, or really expanded 1 new agency and brought 1 on board, and we've had 48 agencies start since March 1st. And they're long-term contracted agencies.
If not, do you have another part to go over?
We have one more part, which I'm going to let Steve Barron talk about.
Mr. Barron.
So the last part on there is $5 million revenue replacement. The state and local funding that we get through the CARES Act allows for a formula to be done for revenue replacement. Greystale is uniquely situated because of the lower census rate to qualify for that money. So that money can go in there to help offset the loss of revenue from lower staffing, the increased costs in agency nursing, which you heard about, and along with other overtime costs that we're going to have related to the home because of the staffing shortage. This will help offset a lot of those costs. Some of them are COVID related, some of them are not COVID related. It also allows us a sort of a streamlined reporting of the money, but Greystale clearly needs the money because of the revenue, the revenue loss we've seen from the lower census.
Questions for Mr. Barron at the moment? Mr. Kusick.
I guess my question about revenue replacement is this. Unfortunately, we have not received a Q4 unaudited, a year-end report, or a Q1 fiscal report. So we're being asked here to accept this on faith without any financial reports for the last 2 quarters. But the last audited number we had was at the end of 2020, which indicated that as a result of CARES Act funding, Greystale had a fund balance of $13.7 million. I guess my question is, where is that fund balance now?
The fund balance is actually $12.2 million. When you hear from your auditors, they will give you that rundown. But we do have $14 million going out the door for the IGT. With the lower revenue and that $5 million, we need to help the home buffer itself because we have the IGT going out. Yes, we will get $21 million back from that $14 million. However, we still have to send that money out the door relatively quickly, and it doesn't come back in one tranche anymore. It comes back in several different disbursements over the course of the year. This will firm up Greystale's cash flow with the lower census numbers. Okay. And I apologize for the financial statements. The accountant is out this week, so we will have those for you for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Barron, I understand what we're talking about, the CARES Act money that's coming in. We don't have that yet. That's the $30 million.
It is, so in our portal, it says $60 million. I just got an email today explaining how we do the drawdown, and I looked, the last $30 million we got on the 19th, and the federal government did say on or about the same time you received your first disbursement of money, the second disbursement will come through. My guess is I should have it within the next 2 weeks that I will be requesting the drawdown of the money.
In some ways, we're talking about a receivable here. I mean, we're spending money we don't have yet, but you know we're going to get it.
Absolutely, and the federal government has already confirmed on the portal it is coming to us, and the amount is what we expected.
Okay. Mr. Brown.
Steve, you just mentioned with the IGT, we have to send 14 million out. You're going to get 21 million back, so the $7 million net gain. What happens to the 5 million that you're going to use to offset that? Does that 5 million then, where does that go after you get the 7 million back to reimburse for that short-term need?
So the way the cash flow is going to look, we are going to spend a significant amount of our fund balance this year. We don't know where Greysdale revenues are going to be based on the lower census numbers that we're seeing. And quite honestly, with the lower census numbers and the staffing shortage, I would love to take on more people and fill the home. It's just not feasible. So that being the case, we're going to need that $5 million eventually through this resolution to be able to keep a fund balance in the home, be able to keep the cash flow going, and, you know, move forward with all the other plans on top of the retention bonuses, the new hire bonuses, and all the things we want to do to bring people into the home.
Just based on, I assume you have done a forecast as best you can on the home in terms of expected residency. You must have some handle on at least the current overhead costs. That's all personnel, all of those types of things. So based on where you are today, knowing it can change in a month with dynamics in the marketplace, where would you expect Greysdale to end up?
If I had to predict,
without the 5 million?
probably a county contribution of 2 to 3 million, if I had to guess.
And that's after receiving the 7 back?
Correct.
All of that included?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Barron specifically? We might end up at the full meeting. I'm sure there might be some more questions or delving in, but.
I will be here to answer any of the questions that come up.
But, so, okay, I don't have any questions for you right now, thank you. Oh, you left. He's like a magician. All right, did you want to come up then and introduce and give us
She's going to hand out
Snapshot.
the, my report, and then in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Marion.
Yes, please.
So Marion can come up and introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. Allergies, nothing else.
Believe me, I get it.
My name's Marion Panasiuk. I came to Greysdale
Can
the
you
end.
spell your last name?
Panasiuk.
Okay, thank you.
I started at Greysdale the end of October. As far as my history, I have quite a long history already of my nursing career. I started out many years ago working in psych at Allentown Hospital. Went on, so I was familiar with your conversations with the state hospital because I had been there as well, not working or as a patient, but we had the liaison from there. I had gone on to work with Sacred Heart as an outreach coordinator, which was probably my first introduction going into the main building at Northampton many years ago. From there, I progressed. I worked with Bucks County at Neshaminy Manor, a smaller facility, but I was the manager of the dementia unit and psych. And then from there, I progressed. I moved into New Jersey. I'm fortunate, I live right on the border. I live down from Easton, and I could just cross the bridge over. So I was a director of nursing at Hunterdon Care Center, as well as Forest Manor in New Jersey. When I left there, I had adopted our daughter. My husband and I had adopted our daughter. So I was looking for something that wasn't quite as intense as a director of nursing position. So I spent 10 years doing case management for a long-term care insurance company, which kind of got a little boring at times, and it was time for a change again. The company was sold, and there was a lot of transition. So I started looking, and lo and behold, I'm at Northampton. I'm very thankful. I think there are a lot of opportunities for the facility, and I'm looking at it as a growth position as far as working with Jen and Dawn. I think the facility has a lot of potential and opportunities, and I'm just looking forward to doing that.
Well, welcome. I
Thank
didn't
you.
get to meet you yet. I think that your background in the Allentown State Hospital, given what you heard earlier, probably be helpful. I mean, because we tend to get folks and who probably need things that maybe aren't available currently. And also, I just wanted to say, I have a feeling that, given everything, I know you won't be bored at Graysdale.
Oh, I'm not bored. When I actually started my nursing career, I worked on W6 on night shift.
You know?
So it was quite an eye-opening experience.
Well, I don't know if anybody has any questions for you, Mr. Meyer.
Someone please explain to me what ADON means?
An assistant director of nursing.
Thank you. You put letters.
Fair point, the alphabet soup is,
Correct.
get deep sometimes. All right, anybody else? If not, thank you and
Thank you.
welcome aboard, and forward to talking to you, hearing from you. Okay, Jen.
I did want to start out and say, as I had expected and hoped, we do have a VA contract back. So I'm working on that because we had lost it, but it's coming back.
Oh,
The VA.
the VA, okay. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Did you have, oh, I thought you had a question. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Well, as you can see on here, our census, and this is for March, is 430. As of today, we have 406. So we have over 50 people waiting. It's closer to 60 or more. But we are hesitant to do anything while we try to get our PPD up. But more importantly, we don't know what the federal regulations are that are going to come out. So it would not at this point behoove us to, once we get to the 2.7 or higher, which is what we want, to admit people into the nursing home without knowing if we're going to have to change the facility layout to 1 or 2 bedded rooms. So we're kind of playing this game of finding out what the federal government's going to be doing.
Well, I think, and you're hitting a good point there, and the executive mentioned this. I mean, I have to agree that going to the 4.1, these are noble aspirations,
Right.
which aren't necessarily in line with the reality on the ground. And I don't even know who proposed it, which party, I don't care. But I mean, I think it's a nice idea. I don't know, much like the CHIP program back then, I think there's a result here that if that happens, Graysdale is isn't going to be the only person, group, or home that's going to be affected, right? So I've got to believe that they're getting feedback on this from many places. I would be stunned if they go through with that. As great an idea as it may be, and there are many great ideas out there, but then you have to look at the practical side. Can you do that right now? So I just wanted to say that we mentioned the 4.1 and that.
There's probably going to be some sort of hybrid. New York had gone, they had no PPD hours. They just settled on 3.5.
Really?
And then,
When did that start?
oh gosh, that was about a month ago. It was in the papers.
Are you going to keep checking? I mean, I would have to think that that's going to be an issue for New York, maybe. We'll see. I'd be interested to know how that works out.
Oh, constantly, daily, we get
All right.
information coming through. Or we could go, and what they're hoping is more like Delaware, where they look at not just nursing as being a part of the residents' lives. So you're looking at the therapy, you're looking at the social services who come in, the TR aides that are spending time or helping to feed. Those hours will be incorporated into that time. So that, I believe, is hopefully where they're going to look for. But again, we'll have to wait and see, because I think Pennsylvania might be waiting for the federal government. Who knows?
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hold it. Excuse
Yep.
me. Does she have a question? Laura, do you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Jen, my understanding is that there were hearings at the state regarding this 4.1 issue. Have you all proposed or written any letters or any testimony to them? And if so, can we get copies of that?
Sure. We actually spoke with two senators, Dawn and myself, and we told them how this could impact us in a negative way, just jumping to the 4.1. We gave them a plan over a 5-year period where it would be incrementally increased. Unfortunately, I don't know if, they're going to run with that, but that's what, we did meet with two senators. So I can certainly share you that memo.
My understanding was that the comments were to be addressed to the Department of Health because they had open hearings. Am I incorrect in that?
Yes, that was the second part with the open conversations, yes, and we were part of PACA on that aspect of it.
All right, so nobody in our county has written a letter of dissent or complaint or disapproval of the 4.1 at this point?
Ms. Vargo Hefner, Lamont, absolutely, we did, and you got a copy of it.
Lori, is there anything else?
No, I just, go ahead.
All right. So go ahead, Jen.
So you can see everything on the
Right.
paper yourself. I just wanted to mention that next week is Nursing Home Week. So we will be having different activities. We have dress colors to coordinate for each day. And then we have a meal for all the staff members on Wednesday, and it's served on all 3 shifts. So it's a really, really good thing, and we have a little present for them to go with it as well. So we're looking forward to that. But if anybody has any questions with anything on the report.
Yeah, I think there were some from before.
Okay.
But I just wanted to ask you, on the 50 waiting list.
Yes.
I know we've talked about, obviously, staffing, what we can handle and what we can't. But would you say, putting staffing to the side for a moment, of those 50, do you have any idea how many would probably qualify? Is that a 50 waiting list of people that the hospital may have said we're going to discharge, or their families, and you've already deemed they probably could come in?
Oh, yeah. Our admissions department has pretty much met with all of them, so
Right.
they've done the
So
paperwork.
that's post, because I know, we get people come in and it's not really a nursing home situation.
And that's why I put the plus, because there are families who are just calling and saying, hey, let me know when you start, then I'll come in. But unfortunately, it's a tough position because admissions comes to me all the time and asks me, could we, because the families call up and they need to place their parent, and right now we can't.
Okay, questions? John had a question from earlier, so go ahead and ask.
Just to reiterate, I'd ask, how many currently open positions are there at the facility?
So between full and part-time, there's approximately 400. There's about 100, maybe a little over 100 of ones that just will never be filled. We had talked about them probably last year, that there were positions that were just recycled positions that are never going to be filled. So those are part and full-time positions.
So how many full-time are currently?
I can get you the breakdown of that specifically.
Thank you.
Mr. Myers, did you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
At the bottom of this, administration institutes a phone call to anyone who has put registration preserve relationship. We are converting to PRN. What's a PRN?
Sorry, so it's somebody who comes off and on. So a PRN schedule is, they make their own schedule. They work when they can.
That's a part-time RN, is that what you're saying?
No, it's any field. What does PRN stand for? I forget what PRN means.
What does PRN stand for?
I think in medical nomenclature, it's as needed.
Right.
PRN means.
We call it as needed. Like when you take a pill, you take them as needed, it's PRN. I cannot think of the acronym for it.
So when you see that on your medical records, that's what it means.
Sort of per diem.
Right.
I don't want the lawyer to be answering the question.
Yeah.
I had to ask that because
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you're going to use.
I know.
acronyms,
I should give a
Mr.
sheet.
Myers is going to call you out. So from my experience working with Mr. Myers, when I was director, I used to find staff that used acronyms, but they never paid. All right. Oh, Mr. Kusick.
So it's pro re nata.
A little Latin, huh?
That's right, a little Latin in there.
And the actual translation is whenever necessary.
Okay.
Good.
I think an attorney helped write that up with that line. Either that or a former altar boy, I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry. John, Mr. Kusick.
Yeah, thank you. Question I had is, we recently found out that your fiscal affairs manager, Brian, left for another position. What's the status of that, and have you filled it?
We have not filled it yet, so we are interviewing several candidates, looking for the best person for the job. It's a hard position because he wore two caps. So you had the accounting background and the assistant administrator background. Right now, I have a lead accountant, Doreen McCord, and she's great. So I'm working with her on getting her up to speed. So she came from another division. And then, of course, Brandon and Bryce we're working with.
He's doing quite well at his job.
Is he?
Okay. Any other questions?
What he's trying to say.
We don't need to know. All right, anyway. Needs- All right, getting back to this, thank you. I don't know, I would just like to say that I appreciate the numbers and that I think at times, and I know this can create a problem, perception that Graysdale is somehow standing out with some of these issues. And being a public home, we do everything in the public eye, almost everything we do. And I've worked in private and public, and nursing homes in the private sector have a lot of problems, and they're going through a lot of issues. The difference is that they don't have meetings, and they're not answerable to the public at large.
Right.
And they can deal with things family by family by family. So I appreciate the information, and hopefully we can do something to help. And thank you.
Thank you.
That's it then. If there's nothing else, I'm going to call, oh, I'm sorry. I thought maybe she, excuse me, Sue, we were so steeped in Graysdale. Do you have a, I mean, if you can,
I have two things, super quick.
fine.
I wanted to let you all know that I have filled the drug and alcohol administrator position. Kathy Jurley, Jiorle, filled that position. She was the deputy director of drug and alcohol. So she graciously waived her right of return today already. And we will be getting the deputy position posted to get her the help she needs. But she's been holding down the fort for a couple of months and doing great. So we're really excited about that. Ms. Fargo Hefner asked last month how many children and youth folks, kiddos, we have that meet the state definition of complex case, and the answer to that is 7. We certainly have far more youth who have complex cases, but not necessarily meeting the state definition of such. And the rest, certainly I can push till next month, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think you brought this up at the last meeting. I just wanted to ask you real quick, just because I forgot, and I should have wrote it down. What would you say is the most expensive case you have right now, especially with children and youth? Because I know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
The complex that you spend X amount per day, if not, year. Do you have a rough idea?
Well, historically, I think I mentioned a sibling group that we paid to develop an entire program for just the 2 boys in a house. That was about $1,100 a day per child. Currently, that we don't have any of those kind of unique programs, so my best guess is probably somewhere between $5 and $550 a day. That's a good ballpark, and those are for more of the residential treatment facilities. They're not all that expensive, but certainly we have some with specialized programs that are.
And some of that, to get off from children and youth, that also can occur in an area like mental health.
That's our biggest problem, is that they're youth who have behavioral issues, but they have significant mental health issues, maybe intellectual disabilities as well. And so there really, really are not very many programs that can meet their needs and provide the treatment that they need.
So you basically have to create something often.
To Tiff's point about funding, I suppose.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
If there are no other questions, we'll conclude.
You will let us know when they open the doors on.
Of course we will, Mr. Myers.
Motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.
I'm adding the last thing right now.
You're the best. I gotta run and finish my dinner.
Yes, go ahead.